And actually, you bring up a good point. Even if you don't want to use AI, you need to know more than the client does about AI.
The first part was about the basic prompts, and the second part was about the advanced prompt, which is to auto-generate a prompt for you.
In the future, there might be pre-editors. That means translators are assigned to do pre-editing work, and there might be post-editors.
Hello fellow translators. So this is going to be a unique video in that this video is going to be discussing everything you can accomplish as professional translators with AI. I see these videos about AI and they either talk about how bad it is and how ominous it is, or they're trying to sell their own product, and it really annoyed me. And so everything that we discuss that you can do with AI, you can do for free in this video. And that's what I like. So what is this video? This video is basically a summary of the translation conference that I attended here in Taipei, the annual one. So in order to discuss this, I actually invited two people, Rita Tsai and Cherry Cheng. And the reason I invited them is, there are basically two reasons. First of all, the whole conference was in Chinese, and so they'll be able to relay a lot more than I can. And secondly is because, to put it bluntly, they're a different generation. I'm Gen X, I guess, and they're Gen Z. And I noticed with new technology such as this, there's a lot more diffidence with people from my generation. And so I thought it would be interesting to get their perspective. Now, as I mentioned before on my LinkedIn, this was a very interesting conference. You had people who weren't even in the T&I industry who were there. And I don't think I've ever seen that in conferences in the US or in Europe. And I really like the optimism in it as well. So we're going to go through the first three sessions. We're going to be discussing them, and then we're going to have some talk and discussion about the takeaways. So I'll probably divide it. There'll be two videos. But anyway, without any further ado, why don't you check out the video?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rita Tsai. I'm a Chinese English translator and interpreter. And Cherry is my schoolmate at NTU.
Okay, hello everyone. I am Cherry. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, but I'm now based in Taipei because I'm pursuing a master's degree in conference interpreting here in Taiwan. And I am now a freelance translator and interpreter. My working languages include Cantonese, my mother tongue, Mandarin, Chinese, English, and Korean. And yeah, I knew Rita from graduate school, so it's great to reconnect with her at the Translators Gathering and also meet other colleagues like Robert. So yeah, I'm excited to share more about what I know about the Hong Kong market with all of you.
Oh, I forgot. Thank you for having us. It's quite exciting to be on your channel.
We're going to be talking about three different sessions. The first session was the use of generative AI in translation and interpretation. And we can start, Rita, yeah, you can start with that, if you will.
Okay. The first part was about the basic prompts, and the second part was about the advanced prompt, which is to auto-generate a prompt for you, so that you can just ask Chatgpt to execute the prompt, so that it's easier for you to use the tool. Okay, so for basic prompts, you can use generative AI for interpretation practices, creating a glossary, translation, editing, proofreading, and debating translation choices. I can briefly introduce the prompts so that translators who are interested can try out by themselves. So for interpretation practice, you can ask the Chatgpt or any generative AI tool with voice recognition feature to practice interpretation with you. And you can ask for feedback on accuracy, fluency, or word choice, and so on. For glossary creation, you can specify the output as a table. So the first column can be the source text, second column being the target text, and the third column being some explanation on technical terms. You can also specify the number of words you would like the tool to produce. So you can say, like, give me 20 words or 50 words related to, say, whiskey, if you're doing a whiskey-related conference. For translation, you can definitely ask generative AI tools to translate from a certain language into another language, which is our target language. You can also customize or specify the language style, how concise it should be and the formality of the tone. For example, if you want a lighter tone for the audience, for your target audience, or if you want a higher register tone for your audience, you can specify that in your prompt. In addition, you can also ask the generative AI tool to refine or improve the machine translation that it produces. And this also applies to human translation. You can feed in any translation, be it human or machine translation, and then ask the AI tool to further improve it. So it will read better, it become more fluent or more accurate based on your prompt. And for editing, you can ask the generative AI tool to enhance fluency or to increase accuracy, and then ask it to provide the output as a table. So the first column being based on what you like. It can be your source text, your original translation, and the second column can be the revised translation, and the third column being the reasons for revisions, so that you know the logic behind its editing. For proofreading, you can also ask generative AI tools to check for omissions. It can be omissions in human translation or omissions in machine translations. And you can also ask the generative AI tool to produce the output as a table. For example, there's a column for the reasons of the possible reasons for omissions and some suggestions by the AI tool. And finally, you can ask the generative AI tool to debate certain translation choices. For example, you can ask Chatgpt whether the translation you think of sounds better than the one that it produces. Or you can also challenge Chatgpt, asking if this really sounds good. And it can ask, are you sure this is the best option? Are you sure this is the best translation? Can you make further improvements on that? If you keep asking, are you sure, for 4 to 5 times, you usually can get a optimal output, like the optimal translation or any outputs that you want. And yeah, and for all of these prompts, you can also ask the generative AI tool to export the results into an Excel file. Of course, you can also ask it to produce it as a Word file. I've tried it and it worked. So that you can get a glossary quite easily. You don't need to copy and paste it into an Excel file. You can just download it. Okay, so that's the basic prompts. And for the advanced prompt, you can auto-generate the prompt. You can ask Chatgpt or any generative AI tool to automate the prompt for you. So what you need to do is to come up with a framework with some bullet points. The first bullet point can be like your goal. The second bullet point can be the role, like the generative AI tool needs to play. For example, you are a professional translator specializing in arts. The third bullet point can be some limitations, like word count. Like you should no longer produce a line that is more than 20 characters, for example, if you're doing subtitle translation. And the fourth bullet point can be your output language. For example, traditional Chinese instead of simplified Chinese. Or you can also specify your output to be both edited results plus the results after the machine has checked for omissions. You can ask it to execute 2 things at once. For example, what I mean is that you ask Chatgpt to look for omissions and editing advice at the same time. You can do that. You just only need to specify that in the output line. Okay, next you can also apply existing translation glossaries or term bases or certain words with existing translation. So for example, when we're translating from English into Chinese, a lot of the terms will be translated into simplified Chinese. But then we want it to be traditional Chinese suitable for the Taiwanese audience. So you can specify the translation of certain source text or certain words. So that's for the TB term-based part. Moreover, you can apply other rules. For example, you can ask ChatGPT to be extremely accurate or to sound fluent and to avoid fabricated information. That's something that you can specify. And finally, is the output format. You can specify it to be a like Word file or a table and so on. So with this framework, you've got different bullet points. So you can manually fill in these bullet points as a prompt for generative AI tools, or you can ask generative AI tools to come up with the entire prompt. So what you need to do is to define your goal. Say, you're asking the generative AI tool to translate a medical text from English into traditional Chinese, so that you write that line about your goal. And then you leave all the bullet points empty, but then you still can list out some of the things that you want to be specific, like the role of AI, limitations, output language, output format, and so on. So you've got these bullet points without specified details. And you can basically ask the generative AI tool to come up with the prompt for you. And you just ask it for that, and then it will come up with a complete prompt with all the blanks filled out. And then you can just ask it to, okay, now execute what you produced just now. Like execute based on what you said, or execute based on what you suggested. And then you just feed the machine with the source text or any other text, and then everything can be produced. So that's how you auto-generate a prompt.
Sorry, I was going to let you continue to the end, but take a quick break while I ask a question. So if I understood correctly, you can specify something like you're a Chinese English medical translator, and then you can specify like you want it to be traditional Chinese, and then you said you leave certain bullet points blank.
Yes.
And then what do you tell it? Do you ask it to please fill in these bullet points, or do you say please come up with your own prompt?
I think both are okay. Like you can ask it to fill out these blanks for you to come up with a good prompt.
So it'll fill in the blanks based on the information that you gave it above?
Yes.
And then it'll come up with a prompt underneath. Is this what you're saying?
Yes. One last point about the first session is that 1,000 to 3,000 words are the ideal word amount to feed into the generative AI tool. If you ask it to translate too much content, it will forget. Sometimes it will forget about what it has translated. If you provide too much source text, the ChatGPT usually would ask you if you want to continue. And then if you hit the button continue, then it will continue to generate translation. But then you want to avoid that, because sometimes it will forget what it has translated. So the best way to use ChatGPT is to limit the input within 1,000 to 3,000 words based on like how much it can take.
So I have some questions, but I'll wait until Cherry gives her notes.
I actually want to chip in because yeah, thank you, Rita, for helping me to refresh my memory, because I remembered when I was listening to the first session, what came to my mind was that prompt engineering, like designing the prompts, is actually very important for translators and interpreters in order to use the AI tools in a handy way. Because what Rita just told us about the prompts, they're all like practical skills we need to learn in prompt engineering, and it comes to my mind that maybe we can actually build a prompt bank or a prompt database where like translators and interpreters, they can actually share prompts that they find it very useful, that are they're very effective to help translators to get the results that they need. For example, if they want to find a prompt that is used for checking grammar mistakes, then maybe some of the prompts, they have keywords or instructions that are able to trigger the AI tool to give better results. And I think that needs a lot of trial and error. And it will be even better if we can actually pull our resources together and have maybe like a database so people can go on and search, oh, this prompt works better than what I created myself. And I think that will help translators and interpreters save their time in designing their prompts, and we can actually like learn together, because I know designing prompts can be like tiring and daunting, because you'll never know what you get just by typing things that you want, and you don't know if AI listens to your instructions. So yeah, it's just my suggestion. Maybe we can build a prompt bank where everyone can search the prompts that they need. Yeah.
Actually, that would be a good idea, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, brilliant idea. And the keynote speaker, Ken Liu, actually shares his prompts quite generously to translators. So
Yes.
I really appreciate that. And from his talk, I also learned some more new prompts. So yeah, having a prompt bank is definitely a good idea. I would like to add on to what you said about importing term-based, because you can import several words in the prompt by yourself already. And I think for the free version, you can also specify some of the translation in your settings. That might be something that you can try.
So let's move along then to the second session, which was basically Q&A with some of the organizers, I guess. And I found that super interesting. So I'll let you guys, whoever wants to start first can start first.
It was by 3 speakers. One was the keynote speaker. The other 2 were professors at Taiwanese universities, and they were all very established, and they were also practicing translators and interpreters. So of course, the 2 professors would first share how they use the AI tools, right? So for the interpreting professor, he shared how he used AI tools to build his knowledge base. So he would ask the bot to explain certain technical terms in simple language so that he can easily acquire the knowledge that he needs to know when he was preparing for quite complicated subject matters such as semiconductor and so on. And for teaching, this interpreting professor would also use generative AI tool to write scripts or extend speeches so that they're long enough for students to interpret in class. And he also brought up this suggestion where students can do their self-evaluation with the help of Chatgpt or any generative AI tools. So students can ask for suggestions to improve or refine their interpretation by asking the machine or the AI tool to compare the source text and their own target texts. So students could seek advice on conciseness or word use and so on. And for that translation professor, she said she doesn't really use generative AI tools to translate books, because she's a book translator, because of copyright reasons. And she also would not use AI tools to translate marketing or product information that are not yet published because of confidentiality reasons. So she would teach students about these confidentiality concerns and ethical principles when applying generative AI. And in addition, she would help students to acquire machine translation post-editing skills by letting her students experiment with these AI tools. So to avoid students to do their homework entirely with AI without, having translated manually by themselves, she would ask students to come up with a report where there's a table where the first column being the student's own human translation, the second column being the edited machine translation, the third column being their reflection, so that students cannot cheat and would actually try to compare human translation against machine translation. And then from this process, students can understand how the logic behind machines and how human translators can better their skills, and they can also understand the niche of human translators. Okay, so that's how they use generative AI. And for the rest of the discussion, it was more on the outlook of the T&I industry. So here are some of my takeaways. First, we should reposition ourselves as a specialist in culture, language, and communication. This is because our job will likely to change in the future. So in the future, we might be a consultant for cultural, linguistic, or communication expertise. Second, we should constantly improve our language skills and the quality of our translation and interpretations. Third is we have to help our clients and society at large to understand the value of expert human translations by helping them to improve their language skills. Therefore, they will be able to distinguish between good and bad translation or interpretation. This is because our clients or society at large are the end users of translation and interpretation. If they cannot appreciate or understand the difference between good human translation and machine translation, they would not appreciate the existence of a translator or an interpreter. So if they have really good language skills, they will be able to understand what we have contributed in communication. And next, communication skills are crucial, not only for negotiating with clients, but also collaborating with AI tools. So for communicating with your clients, with better communication skills, you will be able to negotiate for better fees or to communicate your value to your clients. What was highlighted here by the translating professor was that translators should unite to charge consulting fees instead of editing fees, so that your clients can see your value. Because what we do in post-editing is not just editing. We're trying to help our clients to communicate more effectively by applying our cultural knowledge or language knowledge. So we can charge them consulting fees instead. And some translators even even suggest that we can give clients a final product with a comparison between machine translation and our edited translation with track changes, so that clients can see what we have changed. in the document, and then they will be able to better appreciate our effort. Next is to innovate our business model. We can, in the age of AI, maybe some of our jobs would be replaced by machines, but then we can constantly innovate our business model and add value to whatever we do. By innovating business models, we can consider reaching out to SMEs or any potential clients that might need our language services. And when we're promoting ourselves, we don't promote ourselves as translators or interpreters, but more of a cultural expert who are able to communicate our value, clients' products or services value to their potential clients. So we do not only translation, but also consultant not only for language, but also for marketing, I guess, because we understand what kind of products or services that foreign clients prefer. Next is that some interpretation jobs may be replaced by machines sooner, such as simultaneous interpreting for academic seminars, because it is more of a one-way lecture-based communication. But then there still be settings where human interpreters are essential. For example, panel discussions, roundtable discussions, or settings where CI, consecutive interpreting, is required. For example, political, diplomatic, and medical conferences or meetings. And human interpreters will likely to handle higher stakes assignments because some of the lower stake assignments might be able to be handled by AI tools. So maybe we will have to take on higher stake assignments, and where our existence make a difference. So for some conferences, the presence of an interpreter is essential, and people can feel the impact of a translator or interpreter. And for such conferences, interpreters are likely still to be needed in the future. So yeah, that basically wraps up the second session.
Perfect. So Cherry, do you have anything to add?
2 points, one on the technical side and another one that's more from the industry perspective. For the technical side, I know that using generative AI tools for translation is actually it's more mature than using it in interpreting preparation. So maybe I can add some of my experience that I use Gen AI tools in interpreting preparation or practices. I think now the technical barrier for interpreters to use Gen AI tools is the quality of speech recognition in these Gen AI tools. Because sometimes when I am doing my assignments and writing my evaluation reports, I want to save time. I wanted to save time, so I used Gen AI tools with speech recognition function to help me generate a transcript of what I said or what the speech is said. But some of the times, the quality of the transcription was not that good, so I have to spend extra time editing those transcriptions. So that's something that I think I have to play with it more in order to find out if there's any way to solve it. And I am not sure if this only limits to like the Chinese English language combination. Maybe the speech recognition function works better in other languages, maybe European languages and English. So this is the problem that I encounter right now with Gen AI tools in interpreting work. Yeah, the speech recognition function, the quality of the transcription. Yeah. And for the industry side, I feel like the responsibility of T&I practitioners does not only limit to providing quality service. It's also about managing our expectations and the client's expectations on Gen AI tools and how we use Gen AI tools. Because A lot of times the discussion within the TNI community focuses a lot on whether AI translates better than humans. But actually what determines whether we can survive largely comes from how our clients view about the quality of Gen AI translations and interpretations. So sometimes, just like what Rita said, we have to explain to our clients why you need humans to edit the Gen AI translations, even though you can just generate something that is usable in just a few clicks. So I think this is something that we need to think about, like what narratives you want to put it out there so that the clients can understand that AI tools are helpful, but we can help in other ways too. I think this is something that we should also think about, but not just only how AI translates better than us or worse than us. Yeah. So yeah, I think the idea of providing a comparison between the AI version and the edited version, it's pretty good because it's very clear because the clients can see the differences.
The only thing I wanted to add at a certain point, because I have in my notes that one of them mentioned how translation is not in a vacuum, and then he went on to talk about how this is one of the best times to get into translation in Taiwan because of TSMC and NVIDIA, obviously, and all the what's going on in the tech business. I think a lot of times as translators, we forget that it does not operate in a vacuum. And I think this is a big issue with the AI, especially people of my generation, not so much you guys's, but people who've been doing it for over a decade. They've gotten used to how it's done, and then you realize that AI is here, and certain changes come about, and you have to kind of figure it out. And so yeah, it helps certain industries, and it might hurt certain other aspects, and so you kind of need to educate yourself and continuously and keep up with it. I think that pretty much covers the second part, the Q&A of that session. Without any further ado, we can go straight on to the final part, the third part, the final part we're going to cover, the third part, which will all be cherry because Rita and I were not there for that. So.
So session 3, the theme, it's I, robot. So there's actually 2 interpretations for this title. It can be I and robot. That means you are working with a robot. Or I equals to robot. That means it's a 2-in-1 character or combination. That means you are working seamlessly with a robot. So the speaker of this session is Dr. Tafine Chang. She's from Suzhou University in Taiwan. She is an expert in using AI-assisted tools to do translation. And she has extensive teaching experience. She teaches students how to use AI tools to write and translate better. And she even published a book on that. So if you know Mandarin Chinese, you can go check that book out. And let me summarize the session in a 2-liner. So this session is basically about using AI-assisted tools to do translation and how to do pre-editing and post-editing. But the speaker divided the session into 2 parts, actually. The first part is more about what kind of mentality we should have as translators and interpreters when we use these tools. And the second part is more about the workflow of how we actually use these AI tools in order to achieve better results. So I would like to go into the mentality part first, because I think that sets the tone of our discussion later. At the very first, Dr. Chang actually debunked some of the myths that people have around using AI-assisted tools or AI tools to do translation. And one of them that is frequently asked is people think that if we use AI tools like Chatgpt, we're actually helping it to translate better through machine learning. So some people think it's true, some people think it's not true. So what do you guys think? Do you think it's true when we're using ChatGPT, we're helping machines to translate better than us? Do you think it's true?
Are you asking us?
Yeah.
Or,
Because yeah.
I would say yes, because isn't there an option when you sign in under settings or something that says allow this to learn from what you're doing or something like that?
Yeah. Yes. How
Okay.
about Rita?
Yeah.
Think of it more of a like our challenge, our constant questioning would actually help machines to learn better. Because sometimes I would ask machines, "Are you sure this is the better? I mean, I have an alternative. Could you tell me if this sounds better than what you told me about?" So I mean, the AI platform can learn from my suggestion. That's my concern.
I think both of your answers are how to say, it's plausible, because in some way we're helping machines to learn, but it's not that serious as you think. So the answer that is given by Dr. Chang is a yes and a no. It's a yes and a no. Let me explain this. It's a no because it's conceptually wrong, but factually it's correct. So let me explain this. When we're using ChatGPT, we're actually, when we are feeding some of the information and prompts, we're helping the large language models to perform better. And it performs better in two ways. When we are in a particular conversation, when we give instant feedback saying that, I don't think this translation is good enough, please revise it. When we give further prompts like this, we're helping the large language model to fine-tune its performance. But there's no carryover effect in other conversations. So the feedback that you give is actually only limited to that conversation that you're having. So it actually does not affect the fundamentals of that ChatGPT. So you're only affecting the conversation that you have. If you start a new conversation, oftentimes you find ChatGPT loses all its memory. If you use the original prompt that you use, it will give the same bad answer that you had at the very beginning. So when we are using these prompts, we're actually only affecting the top layer, like the most superficial layer of how the ChatGPT or large language models perform. So it's not to the level that the AI companies taking your information to train models. But sometimes it does happen that the information they provided is used to train the models, just as what Robert says. If you opt in, you take the option that the companies can actually take your prompts and information that you give. They will take that in some point in the future. They may gather all these prompts and they will create another set of data and they will train maybe the latest version. So that training data, it's actually collected maybe from thousands or millions of conversations, and they use it to train a better model. And that training affects the fundamentals of the ChatGPT, and that's why we have new versions of ChatGPT. So I think it depends on whether you opt in for that option, allowing the AI companies to take your information. But sometimes you cannot guarantee if AI companies would take it without your acknowledgement. So I think translators and interpreters have to be careful about that. So it's a yes and a no, because at the instant you are using the ChatGPT, what you're saying is only affecting the performance of the ChatGPT in that conversation, but there's no carryover effect. But if you opt in for that option for AI companies to take your data, and some point in the future, it might help machines to learn better. So I'm going into a little bit of technical stuff here, but I feel like we should understand this. You should understand how ChatGPT or AI tools actually works, so that we can be more mindful when we are using these tools. Yeah. AI companies might gather your prompts and reference documents for future updates, but not instantly. You're not instantly changing the fundamentals of the ChatGPT. And I hope I'm making it clear here, because I know it's a little bit complicated. Yeah, do you have anything to add?
So I have a bit of a question. Well, first of all, I should point out that you have to, at least as far as I know, I think you have to opt out of it, because the default is to, like I see where now it says improve the model for everyone, and it's on, and I think that's the default. The second one is there was a case of maybe a year ago or so of Samsung where they were using ChatGPT apparently within the company, and it became a big thing because of confidentiality reasons. And they decided, oh, everything you put in ends up on a database somewhere. And so now in Samsung, you're not allowed to use any form of, as far as I know, ChatGPT or any other type of public AI. I guess my question is, if you choose to opt out, does that mean that it's 100% confidential at that point? Like you don't have to worry about it, or are we not sure? I don't know. I'm wondering.
Yeah, we in that session we didn't talk about that, but in my opinion, I actually feels like anything you upload it online, you have no guarantee where it will go. Yeah, and you cannot trace it, right? Even they promise that they won't take your information to do other things, but once it's online, it's online. You cannot take it off.
Because you don't know where it ends up. Also, you know, they might keep it confidential, but if in the future ChatGPT say goes into bankruptcy or gets hacked or something, you know, who knows what might happen with the information and where it's stored and stuff like that.
Since we are talking about like how AI works, I actually have something that I want to recommend. There's a professor at NTU. His name is Dr. Li Hongyi. He is an AI expert and he is also a YouTuber. He uploads all of his classes and explaining how AI works in layman terms. I actually took his course in person last year, and I learned a lot on how AI actually works. And he also used a lot of interesting examples or interesting ways to explain how AI works. For example, he used Japanese anime to compare it to AI models, and I find it very interesting. And maybe I can share the link with Robert, so Robert can put it in the description. But sadly, those videos are only available in Mandarin Chinese. So if you know Mandarin Chinese, you can definitely check it out because it's really helpful. It helps us understand how AI works so that we can figure out how similar or different translators are from these AI tools or Gen AI models. Dr. Chang actually used some time to explain differences between AI data and like training and stuff. He highlighted that because she feels like it is very important to uphold our professional ethics when we are deciding whether we want to use AI tools in our work. And there's a rule of thumb that is always communicate with your client. And there are 3 important things to keep in mind when you're communicating with your client. First one is self-disclosure. That means you should tell your client that you might want to use Chatgpt or other AI tools in your work and ask for their permission. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to observe confidentiality. So if you ever signed any confidentiality clauses before, then you should check with your client if certain parts of the document or certain part of the text can be feed into the ChatGPT or AI tools. And the third thing is if you decided to use AI tools and the client does not disagree, maybe you'll have to sign an agreement when necessary. So you have to communicate with the client on that part. So that's a rule of thumb. Always communicate with your client when you're using AI tools. Okay, so those are some of the principles we should observe, as mentioned by Dr. Chang. And now let me go into the workflow part, so the practical part. Dr. Chang split the workflow into 2 major parts. The first part is pre-editing, and the second part is post-editing. We actually looked at some of the examples using machines to translate from Chinese into English. But I'm not going to go through the examples here. I'm just going to go through the steps. So the first part is pre-editing. Dr. Chang emphasized a lot about the importance of pre-editing. It's not saying that the original text is certainly bad. It's just that the AI models might not handle it very effectively. So it will give you ineffective translations. So that is why pre-editing by humans is important. So pre-editing can be done in 2 steps. The first step is manual editing, that means by humans. And there's an important concept that she introduced that is called internationalization. So basically, you are making the source text easier for the AI model to process. And there are 4 things that we should pursue. The first one is straightforward. That means maybe you have to segment a sentence into simpler structures for the AI to process. And the second thing is explicit. For example, there are some of the currencies or numbers that you have to adjust it according to the target language or the target audience. You can do it manually on your own and replace it in that text so that the ChatGPT can just copy and paste what you did in that translation. Yes, and if you have specific terms that you want to use, you can also pre-translate it in the pre-editing stage, so that the ChatGPT will also directly copy and paste the terms that you specified in the translated version. And the third goal is to be neutral. By being neutral, that means some of the words or some of the word choices, if you find it is difficult for ChatGPT to handle, for example, some of the opinion words or some of the other words that you want to make it neutral so that the translation won't go wrong, then you can adjust it, the word choices. And the fourth thing is be concise. That means to delete redundancy. For example, some of the paragraphs, it doesn't have a clear topic sentence, or it is repeating some of the information that you want to edit it. You can do it before you fit into the machines. So you can actually reorganize the structure for a bit, but that depends on what your translation purpose is. Dr. Chang gave an example that is translating a news article lead. That means the first paragraph of a news article. In that context, you might want to reorganize the structure for a bit. You might want to put some of the information into the topic sentences. So you can also do this in the manual pre-editing part. So after you have kind of adjusted the text, you can proceed to AI pre-editing. That means it's the first time you use the machines for translating the text. And you need a prompt for that. And just like what Rita shared in the first session, you can write a prompt like, for example, you're translating a news article that is talking about China's housing prices. So please translate the lead. And this lead will be published maybe in the New York Times, for example. It's a simple prompt. And after you send out that prompt and with your text, you should get a usable version. Like that version should be an acceptable version. It should be grammatically correct. It uses the term that you specified. It's in the right currency. Yeah, you should get a version like that. But you might want to do some post-editing, and that's actually up to you and up to the client's preference, of course. So if you decided to go into step 2, the post-editing step, you can do it manually or you can do it through AI. If you do it manually, I think Dr. Chang mentioned one thing is that we have to ask ourselves how good is good enough. When we're doing post-editing, we have to ask ourselves this question because it determines how much post-editing you want to do and how much time you want to spend on it. If you're doing it manually, you can do light post-editing, meaning that you only correct some of the grammatical mistakes, some of the grammar mistakes, for example, tenses, plurals, or punctuation. You want to make sure it fits into the house rules or certain requirements specified by the client. If you want to do full post editing, you might want to completely change the style of that text, or even you have to do some transcreation. But that's another level of discussion. So yeah, these are some of the examples of full post editing. So I think it actually goes back to what you want from the machines and what clients want from you. So that's for the manual part. But if you want to do AI if you want to use AI to do post editing, that's also possible. But you need another prompt. You need a better prompt to ask the AI tool to revise the translation for you. So this is a prompt from Dr. Chang. So the same example, translating a news article lead. So in the second stage, you might want to create a prompt like, you are a senior journalist at the New York Times. That means you're a professional. So you have to revise the news lead for this passage. And you have to align with the publication's house style and also maintaining the original meaning. So once you send that prompt out, it will do the editing for you. So in this second trial, you should get a version that is better than the acceptable version. It should look more similar to what a news lead should look like. So at that stage, you might consider again whether you want to do some manual post editing or you decided to send it out to the client. The AI tools are there for you to actually save your time and help you to decide whether you want to further revise it. So that's the function of the AI tools in the pre-editing and post-editing stage. But from that discussion, what I learned is that you can actually use those tools to get different versions for your consideration. And you can actually save your time to just focus on what you have to edit and leave the rest to the machines. So yeah, I think that's basically what we covered in the third session. And the very last bit, she also mentioned that with these pre-editing and post-editing functions, there may be new roles appear in the T&I industry. For example, in the future, there might be pre-editors. That means translators are assigned to do pre-editing work, and there might be post-editors. And there might be PMs that are experts in AI human translation projects. And there might be more transcreators. That means translators that uses AI tools and to further adjust the text according to the communication purpose. So these might possibly be the new changes in the industry in the future. Yeah, so my thoughts are that I think AI tools are helpful when you use them mindfully, if you know what you want to get from it. Once you know what they can do and they cannot do, and what you want to get from these tools, I think AI tools are not that daunting to translators and interpreters after all.
When you mentioned the pre-editing and stuff you enter ahead of time, straightforward, explicit, be neutral, be concise. If you're using the free version, like you mentioned, it's best, like Rita said earlier, to use to 2,000 to 3,000 words. So do you need to re-enter the pre-editing like for every couple paragraphs or something, or do you enter it as part of the settings and so it just remembers that that's what you want in general, or how does that work exactly?
Dr. Chan actually didn't demonstrate the whole process for us. She only copy and paste the source text and the translated text onto the slides. Okay. But from my experience, I also used AI tools to do pre-editing before. Basically, you have to enter the prompt every time. Right. Once you ask the tool to correct the paragraph for you. So the same problem, the memory loss problem. I think that still exists. Yeah.
Okay.
For the issue that you guys mentioned, I guess you can create a customized GPT so that it remembers your prompts and then it will continue generating the translation based on your requirements. I guess that's one way to fix it.